This is a general introduction to the Firewise USA program. I know a lot of us here are already alongside the process, but we're going to start with what is Firewise USA, some of the benefits and roles, which might be a reminder. Then we're going to do a website deep dive. So we've done a major website update. That's thanks to the whole team, and Myra, I believe, is in the chat with us, and she did a huge website update, so thanks to her. Then we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then Max is going to go over how we can create a site map, which is one of the first steps you're going to do to become a Firewise USA recognized community. And then we're going to do a Q&A session. All right, so one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was why should we become a Firewise community? Why should you consider becoming one? And I have here with us, rather than me communicating that, I thought I'd ask the resident leader from the first Firewise community of Ventura City, Nancy. So Nancy, if you're in the chat, would you be able to unmute yourself and then just talk to the folks about why they should consider becoming a Firewise community?
Super. Yes, so this is Nancy here. And why should we become a Firewise community? Take it over, Ben.
Well, there's basically many reasons, but probably the top three is that you as a homeowner are really only as safe from fire as your houses next to you. And so we all have a vested interest in working together to make our community Firewise. And then if we make our communities Firewise, we're making our whole city, the city of Ventura anyhow, more fire safe, because we're reducing the risk of the kind of catastrophe we had in the Thomas fire. And then another benefit is that we make the jobs of the firefighters easier because we are informed. We've done what we can to make our houses fire safe. We have emergency training, and basically it's a win-win. And just a plug for the Fire Safe Council. They have really been a help to us. They help us answer questions about this process. And the process, by the way, is excellent. Well designed, very manageable. So it's a super program. Firewise is great.
Yeah, so we were on Colina Vista, and this middle picture you see with the aftermath, that is a kind of a famous picture. It's Colina Vista, and we live on Colina Vista. Our house burned along with 42 others on our street. And we got together and helped each other rebuild. We're a very close-knit community on Colina Vista. And we thought our next step, right? And our motto was, let's not do this again, right? Let's not have the Thomas fire come through our neighborhood again. So we were looking around for about 6 months. You're like, how do you do this? How do you put it together? And all of a sudden I got in contact with the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, and wow, it took off. We had a meeting in October 2022. We got it going, and by July 2023, we had our national recognition. So it is not a process that needs to take a very long time. So it's a good process, it's a helping process, and it's very reasonable. Anything else, Natasha, you'd like us to mention?
No, that was perfect, Nancy and Ben. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So again, they were one of the earliest Firewise communities that was started in Ventura County. And when I got started a little bit after Max and joined this organization, I actually had the pleasure of doing their home wildfire assessment, and that's where I took this picture of their home, and it just really strikes me. The picture on the left, you might recognize this. It's considered a miracle house when the major fires in Hawaii happened in 2023, last year. And really, it's not a miracle house. It's there's a science behind it, and that's a science everyone can learn, and that's really where the Firewise program tries to help communities work in that sense. So it's about helping your neighbors understand the science, and hopefully we all have the peace of mind to come back to a home that's still intact after a wildfire. And that is why you can consider becoming a Firewise community. So now getting to what is the Firewise USA program. It's a resident-driven voluntary program. When you become a Firewise USA community, you'll actually get this cool sign on the right to recognize your community, and folks can drive by and then see that that's a community that's recognized. It is a neighbor helping neighbor model, and it's a recognition, not a certification. So because the entire program is based on an honor system, there's no regulation and enforcement. That's why it's considered a recognition. So we just like to highlight that. And then there's more than 2,000 communities across USA, but there's now 6 communities in Ventura County. So a few of the benefits, it does promote mutual learning throughout the community, and it's credited with multiple instances of preventing structure loss, which is very incredible. It is a program where you get what you give. So the more you put into the program, the better you're going to protect your community. And then there are financial benefits. There could be potential ones. Some is cost sharing. So as you're getting to know your neighbors, you might realize that there are certain parts of your community that have risks that you can share the cost for. So for example, there are vent screens like more ember resistant vent screens that help prevent large embers from entering in a home. And you can buy those vent screens at a bulk for a cheaper price per home. Then there's the potential insurance discount. It's not a guarantee, but there's a potential that you can get a 5 to 10% discount with USAA and Mercury, and a few other insurance agencies, but I'd recommend contacting your insurance to see if that's the case. And then there's access to potential grants and resources from our fire safe councils. So what that means is our fire safe council can apply for grants, and it's a lot easier for us to apply for grants when you're an actual Firewise community, because then we can say this whole community is at risk for X, Y, and Z, and then it'll be easier for us to apply for grants on your behalf. A little bit about our role in Firewise. So again, this is a resident-led program. Majority of it is going to be from your community's team. You're going to work on the 6 steps, which I'll go over, and then you can ask for us assistance when needed. I will say that this program, while it's pretty understandable and digestible, like Nancy and Ben were saying, it might not work for every community. You do need a little bit of a buy-in from your community in order to really make it work for your community. But for your team, you only need about 3 to 4 residents to join the team. Then our Fire Safe Council, our role is really to introduce the program to communities. Every Fire Safe Council approaches the program a little bit differently, and they also are involved slightly differently. But we're not experts on Firewise. This is not our program. We do, however, educate on what we've learned alongside these communities, and we're hoping to use my role and the whole team to better connect communities together. Maybe have Q&As and set up a network for everyone to learn from each other. And then we apply for grants based on community needs. Then there's the fire department, which does support in the risk assessment and supports Firewise communities. It's about like 90% of the risk assessment is done by the community itself, and then the fire department supports where they can. All right, so I'm going to start doing a website deep dive. It looks like there's a lot of people joining with us today, so that's exciting. Let me share my screen for this. Okay, so this is our website, and how I recommend you get there is you just type in venturafiresafe.org. The reason I want to do a website deep dive is really so rather than a presentation, you have an accessible way of getting all the information that you need. And I really wanted to do a tutorial for everyone. So you'll go here into Wildfire Resiliency Program, and then you'll click Firewise USA Assistance. And then this is our beautiful website, redesigned by Myra. So you'll see that we have this beautiful layout here. And what I'll highlight is that there's over 2,000 recognized communities nationwide, and it's a decade-long program. That means that there's a lot of research done about this program already. And then there are 6 steps to becoming a Firewise USA recognized community. There is forming a team. And if you click each of these things, you'll get to learn a little bit more about what's required in each step. And I'll give you a little deep dive as well. So the team is required to create a board or committee with 3 to 5 representatives. A lot of times their HOA might be able to cover this. Let me try this. And then assessing wildfire risk and developing an action plan. Both of these are a document that you have to upload when you apply online. When you assess your wildfire risk, Max is going to go over how you can create a site map. And then there's also an online training for how you can conduct this assessment. And then there's developing an action plan. So this is a 3-year action plan. And I'll give you a little scroll through the action plan just so you can see what that means. And then the idea is to report on your annual investment. So before you apply, you have to have 1 year's or 12 months period worth of investment. What this means is that if you have maybe 100 homes in your community, then you'll need 100 hours of work done by the community, which is about 1 hour per dwelling unit or about $30 of investment. So that would mean about $3,000 in a year spent on wildfire reduction activities. And there's various ways you can track this. Some communities have an HOA that already tracks what work is being done, but it's still important to understand what individuals are doing to protect their home. And that could be something as easy as cleaning out leaves in your gutter, which may take a few hours, or as easy as replacing mulch with rock scaping in the first 5-foot perimeter. And that can be a few hours. It may have costed us some money to buy those rock pebbles. So you can all include that in your annual investment. And then hosting an outreach event. So when it comes to hosting an outreach event, that could mean any event that you outlined in your 3-year action plan too. So sometimes a chipper event might qualify. And then the last step is to apply online. You can apply online at portal.firewise.org. I do recommend that if you already have a team and you're pretty gung-ho about becoming a Firewise community, go ahead and start your application whenever you can. You just have to determine your community's team name. The reason why I say that is because a lot of times it can be confusing about what's actually asked by the program. But once you look through the actual portal and the actual application, you get a better understanding of what the program requirements are. So those are the 6 steps. And then here is where you can join our workshop or book a 15-minute consultation. So let's say you have a lot of questions after this, because this is kind of a robust program sometimes. It leaves a lot of people with a lot of questions. I'd recommend taking advantage of that 15-minute consultation. Get with your team, find all the questions that you want to ask me, and then you can go ahead and book this 15 minutes and ask me all the questions that you have. Or you can email the info@venturafiresafe.org for any questions that you do have. We also have this FAQ section, which is pretty helpful because one of the most common questions that I get, and Max has gotten a lot too, is do I need 100% community participation? So sometimes people are worried about their neighbor that is kind of a recluse, that doesn't really go to a lot of the meetings. Well, it's very encouraged to, in your 3-year action plan, to slowly involve more and more of your community, depending on how big your boundary is. But it's not a requirement of the community of the program to get 100% community participation. It is based on an honor system, but as CAL FIRE reviews these applications, they want to see that you're slowly working towards getting 100% participation over the years. There's a few other questions in here. So one is, how do we maintain our Firewise status? So there's the annual investment, which is you have to report on your annual investment that about 100 homes, 100 hours, or $3,000. You have to report that annually, so every single year. And then you also have to host an outreach event every single year. Then you update your action plan every 3 years and update your risk assessment every 5 years. But I do recommend deep diving in this FAQ section just to get to know the program a little bit more. And then we have the required documents. So here I would really recommend you to read and download these documents because it can get confusing when people are initially starting the wildfire risk assessment. When you read it, you'll be able to get a better understanding of what's required from you. And then you can also contact the Fire Safe Council to learn a little bit more about the science behind some of the steps. We often host a lot of workshops to teach you the science behind that Lahaina house. And when you learn that science, it'll give you a better idea of how to conduct this community wildfire risk assessment. And then the 3-year action plan is also available to download. So we're just going to click the second one here. I believe this should be the Ondolando assessment. Okay, let me actually go back to Okay, we're gonna look into the Ondolando's risk assessment here. So the first page is all about just an introduction to what the risk assessment is. And then you have your participants. We see Nancy and Ben there. And then you have a general site description. And I'm not going to go too deeply into what's talked about here, but I will mention that at first it's just going to be a very initial brief assessment. Some people can just walk around their community or already know their community and fill out half of this assessment. You'll see your roofing materials. A lot of times people have greater than 75% are metal, tile, or Class A asphalt, and you can try to fill that out as you go. And then there is the intermediate zone, which is let's actually look here. The immediate zone, which is the 0 to 5 feet perimeter. So most communities should probably be at the less than 25% or the 25 to 50%. The reason is because this is a relatively new science that the #1 indicator of a home burning down during a wildfire is how ember resistant your 5-foot perimeter is, which means practically no vegetation, no mulch in that 5-foot perimeter, and you have a relatively hardened structure. So most communities are not there yet, which is why this program is helpful, because it'll help you identify ways to get there eventually. And then you have a summary. So in this summary, you're going to identify some of the more detailed version of that percentage. So you're going to say the example here is greater than 75% of homes observed have non-combustible roofs. However, several were noted with wood shake shingles. So Ondolando noted that they have non-combustible roofs. However, several were noted with wear and tear. That's something that could be noted, or they may have leaves in the gutter. You can just walk around the community and kind of identify that on your own. And then the last page here is some recommendations. Based on that risk, how can you recommend folks to become more resilient to wildfire? This could include, right here is a great one. Wooden mulch was widely observed within Zone 0, recommending residents to replace wooden mulch in Zone 0 with hardscaping material. So this is great because this is slowly working towards folks to have more hardened homes and protect their homes during a wildfire. Okay, and then we have the 3-year action plan. This one is another robust one, and I'm going to try to be brief about it. Let's see this one. Actually. Okay, here we have treetops, lanes, HOAs, a 3-year action plan, and this is just an example for you all to review and see what CAL FIRE is really looking for here, because they do want more from the action plan than some folks expect, but it's still doable. Ideally, what you're going to be doing is you're going to look at your risk assessment. You'll see the risks that you identified, and then you're going to look at your 3-year action plan and discuss with people from your community, how can we do this in 3 years? How can we slowly move towards better compliance to better protect our community? And you'll see that each year has a breakdown of education and outreach goals, home hardening goals, defensible space, and then evacuation planning. And it's the same thing year by year. So you'll see that what CAL FIRE is kind of looking for here is to get percentages here. So promote placement of non-combustible skirting where needed, 25% of this goal this year. Not every community is going to be very different, but you do want to try to get into the habit of tracking and seeing if you can get to better compliance year by year. And that is through your action plan. Alrighty, so this has kind of been a overview, hopefully not too overwhelming. You have the 6 steps here, and you hopefully now know how to navigate the website. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. And then I think we're going to go for a quick break, everyone. And then we'll have Max lead with how to create a sitemap. And then we're going to do Q&A. All right, everyone. So we are coming back from our break. And so that concludes the introduction to the Firewise program. It was pretty speedy, and I know there was a lot to get through. But again, I really hope the website deep dive was going to be beneficial for you all. That way you can access it at your own leisure. I do recommend reading it, getting to know the program, and just seeing if this is something doable for your community. And then if this is something doable for your community, we will be hosting these workshops every month on the 3rd Friday of every month at 1 p.m. And we'll also be recording these, so they'll be available on YouTube. So if you do miss it, you can always check that out. I'm going to hand it over to Max now, who is another regional coordinator with the Fire Safe Council, and he's going to do a walkthrough of how to create a site map, which is one of the first steps that you'll likely take if you are trying to identify how many people in your community want to join. Okay, go ahead and take it away, Max.
Thank you, Natasha. Yeah, so I'm going to give a quick rundown. I want to leave as much time in this meeting as possible for question and answers. As we go about continuing this workshop series, holding these once a month, we might have certain spotlights on various things that might make your life easier and trying to help your community reach that goal. But really the essence of these workshops is going to be an opportunity for people that are in the process and development, come to us, ask questions. We might have some perspective ourselves. If not, there would be other people on the call that might offer their perspectives. So the first thing I'm going to share with everybody, let me go ahead and share my screen, is going to be creating a basic sitemap. So one of the things asked of any prospective Firewise community when they are in development is defining your boundary. So I'm back here on the Ventura firesafe.org webpage, and I'm going to click on this. How can I already tell if I'm in a Firewise community? So this map generally has many of the communities that we work with. It's not comprehensive. I do my best to kind of update this map when possible. It's really a visual tool so that if people are hearing about the program and want to get involved, they can go to this webpage, and maybe I live right in here, and I can say, oh, wow, it looks like there are already some folks who are taking on this effort. Maybe I can see if I can get in touch. Or if I go to this webpage and I see that my community maybe right here, there's nobody working on it, well, then that tells me that I can go ahead and start the effort. But the main point is how to create these basic little site boundaries. And the reason I'm doing this is because I found a pretty easy and simple way. You don't need professional cartographers. You don't need anything super fancy. But if I just go to google.com and type in My Maps. So My Maps is a little known, but pretty easy to use tool that Google offers. To my knowledge, you do need a Google or Gmail account to use it. But most folks have this in this day and age. If you don't, it might be worth looking into getting one. So this is what My Maps looks like, and it's a pretty rudimentary kind of basic mapping tool. But one of the things that I really like about My Maps is that, as a matter of fact, the building outlines and a lot of the data that can be kind of helpful in assessing your own boundary, community boundary, is pretty up to date. So I have targeted here a little community that is in Simi Valley. I'm going to zoom in way over here. This was a community that I spoke to a homeowner earlier this week, and we're going to pretend like these folks are in the development of Firewise and they're trying to define their site boundary. So let's say this homeowner was somewhere right in here. Well, from my vantage, it's a pretty clear boundary. It looks like, you know, most everybody on this side of the street ought to be in one community. Perhaps if the HOA extends, the boundary might be a little bit bigger, but we're going to presuppose that for this Firewise community, we're really talking about all the homes on the north side of Lost Canyons Drive. So how do I create a boundary? Well, if I go up here to draw a line, I'm going to add a line or shape. It's pretty rudimentary, but it's pretty great in that I like the fact that you can see all these building outlines, so I know I'm not going to miss anyone. But I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to draw a little bit of a line encapsulating the community. If it's wrong, I can delete it. I can start over. And then I will share how this can be utilized for your risk assessment. Okay. So once I double click, again, if it's wrong, I will just go over here to this little line, click on it, delete it, start over. But let's call this Lakota, Clarkia community. I'll save that. Maybe I will call this layer Firewise boundary. Okay. Now, if I zoom out a little bit, I can mess with all sorts of things like the color, the transparency. I'll just make this fully transparent and increase the border a little bit. One way to provide some more information to both the NFPA and CAL FIRE, who will be reviewing this information, is to make it a little satellite view. So I can just change the base map from the regular base map to satellite. That tells me a little bit more of the on-the-ground conditions, right? I can see some of the wildland adjacent open space next to their community. So that tells me a little bit more about their unique wildfire situation. And then if I just go over here to actually print this page, what I can have results in is a pretty great map, right? This tells me all that I need to know. There are much fancier ways of going about it. You can ask the Fire Safety Council for help in establishing your own Firewise boundary, but really it's going to be dependent upon the neighbors that you know, the natural boundaries and the natural topography of your area. So there will be natural kind of breaks that are recommended to be considered when establishing your boundary. But if I print this page, this is all that I really need to upload into my risk assessment, where it asks for a site boundary and a site map. And that is enough to go on to get your application process started. And if CAL FIRE or the NFPA or the Ventura County Fire Department would like to see any more information, they'll get in touch with you and say, hey, I was a little confused by this, or hey, I'm having difficulties. But the beautiful thing by using my maps is that this saves automatically. So I can go back to it. I can share it with other folks. If there's other information that I'm actually looking for instance, right here, if I zoom out just a tad bit, I can see this is our water tower, presumably for some portion of this community. I can add a little marker right here to this water tower. And I might label it water supply. You can go pretty crazy with it. I don't recommend doing that or spending too much of your time, but pretty often we have encountered folks that have some difficulties in actually just kind of defining their boundary. And what I love about this tool is the fact that when I'm on the individual base map, I can see the building outlines. So I can see what makes natural sense for our Firewise community versus what doesn't totally make sense. For instance, it might not make sense for this Firewise community to consider this portion of Lost Canyons Drive to be a part of it, even if it might be the same HOA. It might make better sense to do something different in this situation, but there's no real wrong way about going about this. And if we get to the point where we're a little bit further down the line, then you want some help getting the name out there, or you want other people to help become involved, well, the easiest thing to do would be to share with me that file that you just created, and I'll go ahead and plunk it down onto the map. And that way, if there are any other prospective folks in the community that are maybe seeing messaging on Firewise USA, they can see that somebody's working on it. You can just export that data here, email it over to us, and we'll get it embedded. Again, it's not a perfect map, our website, but it is the most up-to-date that we have at the moment, and we're continually updating it as new communities sprout up. So with that, I finished a little bit early, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'll probably pass it back over to Natasha, and I think we have plenty of time for question and answers.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. That was really, really great. Another thing that I'd like to note is if you're doing your risk assessment, if you saw Max's map, he had the wildland. If you're a community that's a little bit farther away from the wildland, you'll get to this point that the risk assessment that says if you're adjacent to the wildland urban area. And even if you're kind of farther away from it, you're still going to say, yes, I am. And you're going to try to figure out who owns that land and manages the property, manages like the wildlands area there, which is most likely going to be VCFD, Ventura County Fire Department. But let's see if there's any questions in the chat. So this workshop is really meant for all of you. We can pivot whenever we need to. So maybe for the next one, we'll have more of a Q&A section, but there's going to be a little quiz at the end of not a quiz. I'm going to have a little survey at the end, which will really inform us how we can better help you throughout this process, because this is a continually learning process, and this is one of the first workshops. But let's see if we have any questions here. Okay. How and when do we make the boundary official? Okay, Kevin. So when it comes to the boundary, I'd say it's really kind of up to you. You would want to make the boundary official before you begin working on your risk assessment and really identifying, how many homes have a certain percentage, because if you don't have your boundary clear then you might not have the accurate numbers. So I'd say that's probably going to be one of the first steps. You and your team are going to get together and decide, what do we want our boundaries to be? Another thing about your boundaries is you can also choose to update the boundaries. So maybe one year you didn't have some communities joining you, but then you have adjacent communities that want to join the community, the Firewise community. You can actually expand your boundaries at the next update of your risk assessment. And you're also welcome to use the raise your hand feature, and you can go ahead and unmute and start asking questions. Let me see if there's anyone here.
I'm just going to follow up real quickly on the second part of Kevin's question in the chat. If the boundary includes open space, how is that portion of land accounted for within the risk assessment and action plan? In short, it isn't accounted for. Now, I might be wrong about that, but really what the risk assessment and the action plan are primarily looking for is dwelling units. So number of homes, number of individual dwelling units. There are some communities in the county that have 16, 15 dwelling units, whereas their acreage is quite large because it might be quite a rural community. So some portions of that open space in those communities is obviously owned by the property owners, some portion maybe by other agencies or entities. But the risk assessment and the action plan are primarily looking at the individual homes, the dwelling units. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks. Thank you, Max. And just to bounce off that, your boundary should include the minimum dwelling units for the Firewise program is at least 8 homes up to 2,500 homes. Although we recommend, if you're only going to use 8 homes, try to expand that to include more folks if you can. Because it's just better to have larger and work towards getting the people in that community more informed. And then I have here, let's see. So Bruce said, would it be crazy to add things like the boundary, add things to the boundary map like fire hydrants and pools? Not all crazy. I think that's a good idea. You saw Max do like a water tower supply. If you want to, you can get to it, but again, there's a lot of steps in the Firewise process, so don't spend too much time on it, I would say. But you can actually contact your fire department. I believe we have Larry Williams here and present. He's from the he's our main contact from the Ventura County Fire Department, and you can contact them to supplement your risk assessment. So again, majority risk assessment is going to be done by you, but they might be able to identify those fire hydrants for you. Let's see, any other questions? Alexia, feel free to shout them out if I missed any.
So This is I guess one from Maria. They say they've done the WRA, outlined the basic form, but not submitted the application. They now believe they need to wait for Ventura County Fire Department to review their outline before entering the application. Is that correct? Then the February 22nd MTG in Oak Park is to be counted as our first annual community meeting in the 3-year plan, yes or no?
Okay, let's see.
Big
Let me
one.
Yeah. So for the first one, you need to wait for Ventura County Fire Department to review your application before submitting it. That's not a requirement. Oh, Larry's here to speak. So I'll just mention that it's not a requirement. You can submit it and CAL FIRE will give you their edits. But Larry, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to answer that question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Larry Williams with Ventura County Fire Department, Fire Prevention Supervisor of our Fire Hazard Reduction Program and our Community Wildfire Preparedness Unit. We're definitely engaged with the Firewise. There's even a recording on our website. We have all the information on defensible space on our website, vcfd.org. In response to those questions there, first of all, on your WRA, if you look at page 1, right halfway down in very bold print, it recommends you contact your local fire department to assist you with information on that. So it's not just your fire hydrants. We'll actually come out and we'll do a site review, and we'll be able to give you our review, what we see, and recommendations that you can then take from that report and use it to help complete your WRA report. The two sort of work together there. So we are available to do that. In fact, I just got back from a community in Sunset Hills walking with them in their common areas and homes and stuff. As far as having to submit to us, we just highly recommend you submit to us to give a quick review. I've been engaged with the CAL FIRE chief that does the reviews, especially after we had a couple that got rejected. So we've got a little bit of extra knowledge, and I've shared some of that with the fire safe councils too, of some do's and don'ts in the pitfalls on your action plan and on your risk assessment. Because if you don't complete it correctly, it'll get rejected. So we can sort of give it a preview to say, yeah, this looks good, or no, you're missing some components. They're looking for a little bit more information on this aspect, and that helps save the time weight of them having to get it, review it, reject it, send you a rejection email with the corrections, and then you having to go back. So it's just a little, we're offering to assist on trying to make sure it looks good to submit, so we can get you through the hoop there a lot sooner on that. The other thing on the 3-year plan, as Natasha was talking about, as you fill that out, again, you have to do everything up front. You have to have that initial meeting. So don't put on your year 1, hold our initial meeting. When they're looking at a 3-year plan, they're looking for your next 3 years from the time you make your application, having completed all the stuff you need to do. So it's really, that 3-year plan is really years 2, 3, and 4, because you have to do year 1 up front. It's a little misunderstanding, and some people don't understand that. So, but you do hold your annual outreach meeting. So little tips and tricks to help you get through it. As you go down further in the year, you'll actually do your 3-year plan for the following 3 years. Like those that went through the process after like around July, they were having us put 24 through 26 instead of 23 through 25, because you were already doing. And then when those 4 communities got their recognition, they got their recognition for the remainder of 23 and all of 24. So their next renewal wasn't till the end of 2024 in November. Like I say, our website, it's got a lot of information. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry.
Natasha?
Did someone
Hello?
just unmute?
Yeah, I was trying to raise a question, and I think
Hey, Mario.
you have something to say, go forward, and I'll get back to it.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mario.
Okay, this is kind of a take from what Larry just talked about. Could you explain the difference between submitting your 3-year plan and applying for your applying the 3-year plan, applying for it?
Yeah, I can try to take a stab at that. So let's see. So when you're submitting your 3-year action plan, that's so basically you have the steps to apply. You have to have 1 year of an annual investment. And then before you apply, you have to have a document that identifies what you're going to be doing in the next 3 years after your application year. So you don't necessarily have to do those things immediately, but then once you submit your application, then you have to say, okay, yes, we did this in that 1 year. Yes, we did this every year. That the actual application, the online portal will ask you whether you've done the things that you've mentioned in your 3-year action plan, as far as I'm aware. But Max, do you have anything else to add to that, how to separate that question?
Yeah, I'll maybe just kind of answer it a second time in a different way. So the action plan is to inform the program administrators what you're going to be up to. So becoming a Firewise community doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of work for all of our communities to get done. But once you've proven in good faith that you've taken steps to get there and set up the infrastructure, by infrastructure, I mean specifically the documentation, the annual meeting, and forming your committee. So once you've established that infrastructure, you're going to take the documentation, you're going to submit an application to be recognized. Now, once you're recognized, that's when essentially you get to work. That's when essentially you take your action plan, those things that you said you were going to get to, and you're going to get to work on knocking off items from that checklist. I don't know if that explains it a little bit differently or better. Mario, do you feel like you have a different or better understanding of it?
Yeah, that's been really difficult because when I looked at all the different documents, they've approached it in ways that sounded like your current year is the first year of the application, and then others said no, it's a year after your first year.
Oh,
so we're going to submit ours in the next month, maybe in the next 2-3 weeks. Our plan. So would year 1 be 24, or would it be, would it be 24 or 25?
Okay, I get the question. So I actually reached out to the NFPA about that question, Mario. And what they recommended was that there's actual application available on the Firewise USA website. And whenever they update that first year, so currently the first year still says 2023 on the official NFPA website. What that means is that anybody that's still trying to apply for last year's recognition to be considered last year's a Firewise USA recognized site, they can still apply within this first month. But they mentioned to me that about mid-January, they switch it to be the next year. So then 2024 would be the official starting year. I think on our website, we currently have it, we have to delete that little line. So your first year, if you were currently applying, should be 2024, which is this year.
Now, is that an application or a submission of the form?
That would be the, wait, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. See, this is where I'm a little confused. It seems there's a difference between when you submit your form and when you apply for recognition.
Yeah, Natasha, let me respond to that because I've asked just the CAL FIRE directly. So for right now, in the beginning of this year, even though NFPA hasn't changed their dates on their website for the portal, right now, applications toward the first probably quarter of the year, probably maybe half of the year, will still be, you're still going to be submitting your application in 2024. When you submit your application, you have to have already done 1 year's worth of work. You've had to have your risk assessment, your 3-year plan, your time investment, and your outreach meeting. All have to be done. And then your 3-year plan, because you're early in the early part of the year, you will then continue to work through the rest of 2024 as year 1 on your 3-year plan. But as we get toward past the first quarter, they'll probably start transitioning that. And then that's, again, that was a discussion from CAL FIRE, from the chief who reviews the applications in Southern California.
All right, so we already formed our board in July, I think it was, or September, and we've done general meetings and that kind of thing. But we're still saying 2024 then?
Yeah, you're still gonna say 2024 as far as I'm aware, yeah.
For your 3-year plan, because you have not submitted yet in 2023, you're gonna show 2024 as year 1.
All right, then we'll send a copy of our 3-year plan in the next week to Larry and Natasha to review before we do anything, and you can let us know if we've kind of misfired in some way on that.
Okay, sounds good,
And I-
Mario.
And I think
Right.
Ben and Nancy had something to say, I think, regarding this. Just wanted to say.
Right, and so an example, we have 640 homes in Ondulando Firewise community. We needed 640 hours of work. So we had 50 people come to the
Initial meeting.
initial meeting, that's 50 hours. And then the board worked. And then we asked people to submit how many hours they've worked in their yard, reducing fuel, improving their homes. And by June, we had 1,450 hours. So it was a little confusing because it says a year's worth, right? But actually you just need more hours than the number of parcels that you have. Once you get the hours, we submitted it. And so that's, I think, the idea of the 1 year's work should be the number of hours you need to make it for 1 year. Anyway, all right. And Mario, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have because you're just about ready to go. And that's for everyone. We're happy. And you can ask Natasha, or you can send us an email. Okay.
I think that'd be great too. It's something that we're thinking of doing is like a Q&A with resident leaders, which is often really helpful. So thank you, Nancy. I think also, Mario, you had mentioned you were confused about the submission versus application, something like that. When you go to the actual online portal, in order for you to apply, they'll ask you to submit, upload the documents of the risk assessment and the action plan, and then talk about your annual investment. So that you have to do all of that together before you officially apply. Bradley, do you want to go ahead and unmute? I think you have your hand raised.
Maria also had her hand raised.
Oh, okay, Maria does too. I see that.
Am I unmuted?
That was just what I was trying to clarify because, I mean.
Am I talking or?
I
guess
felt,
I'm-
I'm sorry.
Let's see. How about we let Maria go first? Because I think she had her hand raised first.
We've done a lot of the filling out and trying to flesh out a 3-year plan. We know about the website for entering the investments that had been already made and dollars that are being spent. We know about the outreach meeting. This was the first time that I heard that all 3 of those things need to be in place before we do the application.
Before you submit the application, so
and Larry
yes.
had said there was a 4th thing, the risk assessment, the 3-year plan, something, and the outreach meeting, and I missed the 3rd thing.
I can go ahead and share. So when you see the website, it basically says there's 6 steps. And you do need to complete all 6 steps before you officially apply. If I'm capturing your question right. And I'll go ahead and show you this is a test application. So if you actually create a portal, this is what you're going to be submitting. So this is welcome to the Firewise USA program. Just to give everyone a little bit of an idea. You're going to upload your 3-year action plans, which kind of already should have been completed, and then your wildfire risk assessment. You're going to hit continue. And then it's going to ask you for, let's see, name of your organization that connected the risk assessment. And then it's going to ask you for who your board members are, a part of your team. And then it'll ask you for the activities that you did in your action plan. This is again, let's see, a file attachment. Then it'll ask you for your recorded annual event or activities. what educational activities were completed. And then you're just going to say some of the activities you did. So this is the investment that we're talking about, that 1 year investment. What did you do in that 1 year? You're going to mention some of those activities that you did. And then it'll ask you to record vegetation removal. This is optional, but it's helpful for them to know how much vegetation you removed. And you can kind of see what they're going to ask for here.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do
Natasha,
a deep dive another time too. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
vegetation removal is mandatory per CAL FIRE.
It's mandatory per CAL. Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Then it's mandatory per CAL FIRE. I wasn't aware of that. So you're going to want to have to track your vegetation removed. And the Google survey that Ondolando had done to track that was really helpful to figure that out. And then you're going to do the risk assessment. So I'll stop sharing right now just to get to other questions. But does that answer your question a little bit, Maria?
Yeah, just one thing is, if I'm going through the steps you just all showed, is there a way to save and go back, or do all the steps all the continues have to be done at the same time?
You can save and go back, yeah. So sometimes what I've seen communities do is upload a fake document just to see what the next steps are, because you have to do certain things each time. So you can go ahead and upload a little fake document just to get an idea of what the portal is asking from you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Bradley, you want to go ahead?
Figure out how to mute. Okay. Yeah. Hi, Bradley Yoakum here with City of Malibu. I'm one of the 3 fire safety liaisons, and I'm also regional coordinator, all 3 of us for City of Malibu. And I'm currently working with 3 communities, and it's all brand new to us, all of us, including myself. We just started like this month type of deal. And we've been doing, we did 1 risk assessment actually today. We did 1 last week. My issue is they keep asking me, how do they accrue, how do they keep track of their hours? And I went to a couple websites and showed them there was some email things on Google documents. And then someone else said that they used a Microsoft Excel program. Is that something that they can just do on their own? They just have to make sure it's accurately put in the portal?
Natasha, do you mind if I take this question?
Go ahead, Max.
Bradley, great to see you and
Max.
talk to you. I saw the question in the chat, and since I knew you were going to ask it, I've been wanting to. The reason I wanted to answer this question is because I think to back up just a step, when we talk about the responsibilities of the board or committee for the Firewise community, the primary responsibilities are seeing to completion those documents that are required. We've talked about those. We've talked about how to submit. But in my opinion, the primary responsibility of that board or committee is to figure out what's going to work best for their community. Right, to answer your question in a bit of a nutshell. So the reason I say that is because the ways in which taking Ondolando, for example, again, can go about recording hours is going to be very different than, let's say, some of the Golden Oaks Mobile Home Park in Ventura County here, where we've worked with them. So for Ondolando, as Nancy mentioned, we're talking about 640 community homes. It's a very large space. It wouldn't necessarily make sense for them to have, let's say, a single Dropbox where people can go and drop paper documents inside that Dropbox. It wouldn't really get utilized. They wouldn't get the support they needed. However, that does work for a senior housing community that we're working with in Thousand Oaks, where most everybody throughout some portion of the day is going to the clubhouse. Maybe the mailboxes are there, and it would make sense for them, given that creating a Microsoft website or a Google Excel form or some of these other fancier ways are likely to not get utilized if we do it in that community. For them, it makes perfect sense to just have paper documents and a Dropbox, and maybe once a month, somebody from the board or committee goes and takes those. So I've kind of confused your question, but I think that your responsibility and the responsibility of people that are considering starting boards, that is kind of, in my opinion, the hardest homework that you have, is how are we going to ask our constituents, our community members, to involve themselves in this in a way that makes sense for them and that they're actually going to use. So for Ondulando, website with a Google form that populates an Excel file works great. For Topanga Canyon, which is, over 3,000 homes, they need to put a little bit more muscle behind their website to make it more user-friendly and willing to be interacted with. But for a community of 12, that's just one cul-de-sac. I'm thinking one of our communities, the Deer Creek Property Owners Association, which is in good standing. It's probably just one guy kind of going around knocking on doors once a quarter to say, hey, what have you been up to? Oh, great. Can you send me an email about that? I got a spreadsheet back at the house. So I hope that answers your question. There's no right way. There's no wrong way, but I think that it does need to fit the community. And ultimately, I'd say that that's probably the highest degree of difficulty homework that the board and committee have.
That did answer. Thank you very much. So essentially, because I have like Malibu West, which is a different community, and then I have a small condominium unit complex, 5 buildings, 104 dwelling units. They're going to do theirs differently. And what I've asked them to do is come up with some kind of an accounting that they can, because the state is not going to ask them, oh, they're not going to look at that, but they just want you to be honest. And a lot of the work they're already doing themselves are ready. They just need to account for it and then put it into the portal. So another question real quick on the portal, because the risk analysis, I'm going to finish the complete. So we'll have 3 done. And we were told that I called the state and they want the communities obviously to do their 3-year action plan. So just to be clear, since it's early in the year for 2024, they complete the risk analysis. And what I've been doing is printing it out. I go out in the field and I write a lot of stuff down, come down back. I finish the risk analysis and then my recommendations, and then I'll send it to them and via email, and then they put it on the portal themselves. Is that the way it should be done? I mean, it seems to be working. I don't know. Is that something that anyone else have done that way? And then real quick, if I do get the 3-year action plan and the risk analysis done, and they start the application process, will that be for 2025? Because that's what I'm getting. It could be for this year as well, if they have some of this stuff done.
So real quick, before you answer that question, we are ending 2:15 is kind of what we were aiming for, but we're still going to do this Q&A. I just wanted to ask if Alexia could drop the little survey for everybody to answer what they'd want to see next and how they like this workshop. And then Bradley, we're going to answer your question right now. So Alexia, if you can drop that in the chat, that'd be great. Okay, thank you.
And then maybe while everybody's kind of answering that, I'll answer Bradley's question. To answer your first question, the workflow and the protocol that you guys have established thus far, where you're kind of helping and assisting with the wildfire risk analysis or the assessment, and then you're emailing it over to them, and they're taking that document and uploading it, that works great. That's exactly the way it kind of should work. From my understanding, that's exactly the same way that Larry is doing it with VCFD. He's kind of going to the site, to the community. He's taking some notes. He's kind of getting a lay of the land. He goes back, he writes up the report complete with recommendations from his perspective, emails it to that community resident leader or the board, whatever body they have in place, and then they're going ahead and, completing what isn't done, submitting the whole thing to the NFPA. Now, to answer your other question, I think now this is one of those things that Larry's going to correct me again if I'm wrong, and for everybody on the call, Firewise USA is confusing, and we all know that. And so don't feel bad if everybody still leaves this with lots of questions.
Confusing.
We're going to take small bites at the apple, and we're all going to kind of understand it eventually. Even me doing it over 18 months now, it's still kind of confusing. But if I'm a community like Mario and their group, and I'm submitting, let's say, mid-February, then my action plan is still going to reflect 2024. Now, if I'm Mario and my group is going to submit in October, well, then my action plan is going to reflect 2025. Where the line is to now do 2024 to 2025, I believe is July, but I also don't think that that's written in stone at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really helpful. Appreciate
it. Great.
Max, just again
Yes, sir.
On that date, We'll be staying in contact with CAL FIRE and talk to them about letting us know when they want people to transition their 3-year plans from 24 through 26 to go 25 through 27. It will occur sometime during the year. They are going to be flexible. But the key thing is, before you submit your application, and you could do it in tidbits, but before you push the final button, you have to have all those components, including 1 year's worth of investment, even if you do it in 2 days. Example, the HOA does their brush clearance and it more than exceeds the annual stuff. Well, they just reached it. They can just use that alone. So you just have to have a year's worth in the initial application. But if your plan is 2024 through 26, you will most likely have to do a renewal in the end of 24 and demonstrate you've met that 1 year for again.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, good, Larry. Let's see if there's any last questions in the chat. Alexia, did I miss any questions by any chance?
Not that I am aware of so far. You guys have been on top of it. Poll is pretty much completed. If I can share my screen so I can share the poll results to everyone.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So give me 1 second.
Or perhaps we can potentially just save that for us, but we can see yeah, let's save that for us.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Alexia.
Yeah.
Alrighty, everyone. This was the first workshop. Thank you so much for sticking through to the end. I know Zoom workshops are always hard to just kind of pay attention to, but thank you so much, Max, Alexia, Larry, for your input, and Nancy and Ben, thank you for your input as well. It was great to have everyone participating. Again, these workshops are really for you. We're learning alongside you, as you see, and we're just trying to tailor it as much as we can so we can benefit all of you. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, and hopefully now you know how to use the website so you can book a consultation if you have any more questions. And then I'll probably send an email out pretty soon with this YouTube link in case you want a reminder of any of the things that we talked about today. Max, Larry, does anyone have any last comments to make?
No, I think we're good. Thank you,
Okay,
Natasha.
awesome. Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone.